Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my live interview where I'm your host, Ella Davar, registered longevity dietitian, interviewing some of the top leaders of functional medicine. And today I am honored to host Lisa Koch, and she is an incredible doctor based in Florida, and I'm so excited. She's one of the best Florida specialists. Here she is. And and her specialty, what she does, and how she can help us to life mastery. Where she is. There she is. Hi.
Hi.
How are you, Dr.
I'm
Lisa?
great. Thank you so much. It's a great to be able to
I
connect to
am
you finally.
so grateful to have you. I know how busy you are. You're one of the top doctors in Florida, and I'm always working hard to connect with the best leaders to refer my clients to functional medicine practitioners. And if you
Awesome.
could quickly introduce yourself, and I'm specifically, I don't know if I was able to introduce you properly. I know you work with Tony Robbins community. I know you work on TV, on the news channel, as well as you have your own practice. So you do a lot of things. Could you please tell us a little bit more about your journey, how you get to be who you are today?
Absolutely. So I say gifted with childhood leukemia. I didn't believe that at the age of 15, but I was diagnosed when I went for a camp physical. And at that time, I went through high school and then college with a big steroid face and a wig. And I knew there was a purpose. I thought I wanted to go be a pediatric oncologist and, go give back for everybody that had helped me. And one of my first med school interviews, the person interviewing me literally said, "You don't want to do that. That's like, would be horrible." And then I sat and said, "You're right. I want to prevent anybody from ever doing what I had to do." So that's kind of how I initially just got early exposure to medicine in general, was fascinated by the body, chose to figure out the path myself. Since I just kept asking, why did I get sick?
Wow.
Went to med school, kept asking why the patients got sick, and then there were not really any answers.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. I recently started sharing myself. How do you think I became a gut health expert? I've had every issue. And I was like, that's not attractive. Are people going to really look at me as professional? But at the same time, I am a clinical professional. But I started sharing my own personal story. So I'm so grateful that you just shared where you had to struggle with.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, it's been an ongoing with my heart because when it relapsed in college, it relapsed on my ovary, and then I had to go through chemo again. And then I went into heart failure. So that was all prior to 20, right around 20 years old. And so throughout my career, I've had different things pop up that have reminded me, that I had a lot of exposure to toxins. So it sort of has helped me forge my path into fringe or kind of the unknown side of medicine where I keep questioning things and then I would bring in things and try them and, studied functional medicine back in 2008. So I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've been 20 years in practice. And what is your specialty now?
So I'm an internal medicine doc because I went into internal medicine. It seemed like the broadest approach to the body, right? And then I went and trained in functional after that. My interest has always been in cardiac, but especially in the performance side of like why some people just can perform and why other people, get tired doing nothing. Also,
Yeah.
why people were having weight issues. So I've been studying obesity my whole career as well because that seemed like the low hanging fruit if everybody's overweight. And I chose to believe they weren't eating chocolates in the closet. I listened to my patients. So I went and started really studying the hormonal system and our mitochondria and like what else could we do to help everybody with the weight loss, but also help them with energy. And then that led to a little bit of everything. So I'd say my specialty now is I'm a guide. I guide people into taking their sovereignty back on their medical journey. So that's kind of it's the whole thing, but mitochondria and performance is a special place in my heart.
I love what you just said, how you guide them back into their sovereignty. That's what I do. Like I wrote a book called The Utilitarian Diet, basically how to create your body, your rules, get to know yourself, get to know your hormones, your gut health, your
Amazing.
DNA, and create rules around that and don't care what everyone else is doing. So let's jump straight into practical recommendations. So you mentioned weight loss. What's your top three recommendations? Because I know you work on the stage a lot where you need to get people's attention and provide value right away. So I'm curious, what's your top 3 to 5 recommendations for healthy weight loss for those who are specifically struggling with stubborn weight loss? They're doing everything right. They're eating greens, they're eating proteins at every meal, but still unable to lose weight.
Well, and I think we're starting to understand this even more now with the GLP-1 agonists. So, these shots that a lot of people have had negative things to say about are actually giving us a lot of clues to the underlying cause of persistent weight loss, in my opinion. So they have an anti-inflammatory effect, which is finally allowing many people to get the stubborn pounds off, but they have to be done correctly. So I would say one would be this brand new class of drugs. Another would be understanding, again, just like you said, the fact that you are unique. So even if last week you ate keto and you lost weight, today, if you're in a sort of hyper metabolic super stressed state, that plan may not work. Or let's say you fasted for 2 years and then all of a sudden it feels like the fasting is a problem. Like the individuality can change not just person to person, but even in your own body. So that's another huge thing that I've learned over the 20 years or so that I've been doing this. And then I think the third, because I like to live in the spiritual world a lot, is not just understanding like, do you have binge eating disorder or are you emotionally eating, but really going into some of the subconscious thought patterns and loops that tend to keep us in more of a fight or flight, which pumps out cortisol, which leads to persistent belly fat. So that journey of understanding the spiritual side of things and the nervous system is probably number 3.
I love that. I love the last one that you mentioned because that's what I do when it comes to stubborn weight loss. After we try everything, clean up the diet, supplement, and exercise, then we go into subconscious mind through deep theta healing meditations where in your mind you believe that it is safer for you to be heavier than to be skinnier. Yeah. All right. So next one, you started sharing about your journey and how did you become such an avid public speaker and educator, specifically what it's like to be on the stage. How many people at the same time you're educating?
Yes, I love it. So the biggest stage I have so far, but I feel like I'm just getting started, is Tony's virtual stage for his Life Mastery event. So that's usually between 2,000 and 3,000 people on the virtual. Yeah, and I absolutely love it, and I think it's because I'm so real in my journey. I've experienced every aspect of the pitfalls of the traditional medical system. I have a hyper empathic connected ability for just humans in general because of what I've been through.
Wow.
And I've been able to see how I can go from this sick and lost person to feeling better than I ever thought possible. I actually feel probably 20 years younger than I am at this point. I keep feeling better, and looking better. So I don't want to keep that to me. I want that to be shared. And I've found at this point in my career that, I've spent all this time seeing patients. First it was 4 days a week. Now it's 3, where it's one after the other. And I can effect pretty massive, incredible change, but that's only how many people a week, right? And it's not enough. The world needs change faster and on a bigger scale.
Okay. And what's your top recommendations when you're speaking to like such a big community? And everyone's different, and we mentioned personalization at the beginning, but when you're speaking with a lot of people at the same time, what's your top go-to recommendations that you give away?
Well, I think what I give away that people find very interesting is just I'm challenging their mindset. So especially in regards to medicine. So most everyone now, especially after the past few years of what's gone on, and there's a level of distrust. There's a level of sort of not knowing where to go, not knowing what the truth is. So I give some tools. I call them the 3 principles of truth.
Okay.
To navigate that journey. So I'm happy to share those with you.
We'd love to hear. Yeah.
So one is, it may be true, but just not yet discovered. So that's the fact that medicine is an art. It's a practice. Things are coming up tomorrow that we don't know of today, right? So, like, we didn't know there were 4 phases of water, for example, is one of the things I teach people. We always thought it was ice, liquid, and steam, and there's actually a gel. And the gel we make when we can throw blueberries, for example, into our water, and then we hydrate better. So just being open, I want people to understand that there are just things that haven't yet been discovered. We may find them out now, we may find them out 5 years from now. Principle number 2 is things may be true, but we are led away from what we think is true, from our intuition, because of an agenda. So that's been no more obvious in the past 3 years. But like things like natural medicines versus big pharma, and how natural medicines must not work, and different programming like that, where even we were told that fat was bad, and we all were eating SnackWells. Like this was back not that many years ago, right? And now everybody's eating fat. Or we were told, let's eat 3 meals a day or 4 meals a day or have a drink a day. Now a lot of this stuff we're coming back around, and maybe there was this agenda. So again, keeping an open mind, knowing that there are sources of information that may be blocked or may be slanted because they're trying to get us to see things in a certain way that doesn't always gel with our truth. And then the last principle is one we touched on a little bit, which is we may have things that are true, like especially about our own capacity to be the best version of ourselves, but it's blocked by subconscious fears. So what you do, the work you do, and just understanding that, we may really have things that we don't realize are there, that are looping, that are keeping us from stepping into that true performance highest level version.
Yeah. Okay, so you're a functional medicine doctor. What's your top that you believe that every single person should be doing annually or once in their lifetime type of testing to learn about their bioindividuality and their, what's going on underneath their skin?
Well, I can tell you, I'm super excited about some of the things that are available now. So the full body MRI. When I first started practicing, I wouldn't order these types of tests because there was a lot of false positives. Patients would get freaked out. They'd be on a goose chase, biopsies, things like that. The tech now has gotten so good that these full body MRIs, such as Pronuvo is one of the brands that we're recommending, can catch things before they become an issue. So I had a patient of mine come in, felt totally fine, labs totally fine, and he went for this full body scan. They found a very, very small prostate cancer. And long story short, when the surgeon got in, he told the man that it was about to get into the bloodstream. And not only did we prevent that, but he has no side effects, no erectile issues, no problems. The surgery was easy because the surgeon had never seen a lesion that early, right? So this tech is now finding things, and what they tell me is 1 out of every 20 scans that they're finding something.
How do you spell
So
that? Pronuvo?
it's Prenuvo.
And where in Florida?
They're in Boca. So they're going to be coming to Tampa next year, but right now my patients that have had it done have gone down
send them to Boca? Got it. All right, so that's your top recommendation. What about in your office?
That's one. Well, there's one other one that it's not in my office, but it's still amazing, which is a coronary CAT scan for the heart. Mm-hmm. So we've had these like calcium scores to take a look at what's going on in your heart vessels available for a while, but they're the newest tech, and this is like $1 million machine. So you've got to find somebody in your area that has it. But we do have a cardiologist that has it here now. It literally looks as if you had a heart catheterization. You can see inside all the vessels. You can see if there's early plaque, soft plaque, and then we know to get more aggressive with our therapy. And then you can even retest a year later and see regression of the plaque.
And what age do you recommend people start doing these two?
It depends. So it depends if you have a cardiac risk, profile that's a little bit elevated. So sometimes I'll have patients who they're like everybody in their family had a heart attack in their 40s. I may be scanning them in their 30s. We're now seeing plaque and as young as in the 20s, honestly, because of all the crap that's out there, as you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anything else? A third thing?
Scan wise, let's see.
Or testing?
Those are testing wise. I mean, I do on the testing, we do a little bit of everything, kind of like you. So we're doing a Nutri eval just to get a broad picture. A lot of times we'll catch heavy metals that can be hidden away. I tend to go really deep in the gut first, and I use a lot of muscle testing for that. So sometimes I don't even do stool testing and food allergy panel till after, because I found in my career that if you do food panel, and you know this, I'm sure better even than I do, but if you do a food panel before you heal the gut, it's just going to be a lighting up like a Christmas tree. So we try to get the gut healed first and then do the testing on the other side if patients are still having symptoms.
Got it. Okay. And what are some of the main health concerns that people come to your office with these days that you
The
specialize
biggest, by far, the biggest has always been fatigue.
in?
So it's just like, I know I can feel better than this. So it's
Yeah.
brain fog, fatigue, inability to handle stress. We do a lot of hormone therapy as well.
Hormone therapy. Okay. All right. All right. So when it comes to diet and nutrition, what are some of your top recommendations? I know we kind of like going to talk about the same thing, but specifically, I want you to talk about protein.
Okay, awesome. So one thing I love doing, and I'm sure you do too, is a continuous glucose monitor, just as a quick aside for whenever I'm trying to help people with their nutrition. So I will give them a general recommendation, which is typically a higher protein plan. I do find people get in trouble with trying to find creative things to eat, and then I'll sometimes send to a nutritionist or try to get some extra help with a group in town that will do some healthy cooking for people. But I like to have patients wear the monitor and try different foods because it really helps that
Yeah.
connection back into your body, right? Like so much of the eating is just not even conscious. So when they see that snacking, and it was even just for me, it was really helpful because I had an insulin glucose dysregulation that was going on. I have it in my family. And I had the same blood sugar response to gluten-free crackers that I love, these little almond crackers that I love. And I may be eating healthy, roasted garlic on top of them or like wild salmon or something. But those crackers had the same effect if I have them on an empty stomach as a piece, like some ice cream. Literally the same blood sugar response. So I like people to understand that difference.
Yeah.
And then for people that are more sensitive, higher protein probably makes more sense, much higher, like maybe 100, depending on the female size, but 100 to at least 120 grams a day, with filling in with some of the healthier good fats, and then trying to keep the carbs more in the berries, the fruit or like the sweet potato type thing, if the blood sugar isn't hyper responsive to that.
Got it.
So
All right, so there's two questions that I have from what you just shared. So I'm gonna go on with my original one. So I specialize in longevity,
yeah.
and I'm big in the industry. And what I found, I recently attended a big summit, and there's a lot of big names and big like famous people that have a big audience. And most people who don't work with people like researchers, analysts, scientists, they tend to except for a couple of doctors. Now there are a couple of doctors. If you want, I can name names after I say
Yeah, for sure.
that recommend vegan diet for longevity, for low inflammation, for preventing heart disease. There's a lot of reasons that they use where I disagree with, but
do.
they have a
I
big
disagree.
audience, and I'm sure you know those people. And what's your take? And how would you?
Well, listen, I think you're so right when you talk about people who see people versus people who don't. And that it just side note takes me back to when the pandemic started and the people talking about it were people that don't see people, right?
Yeah.
I was the one getting the 8,000 patients calling me for solutions. Anyway, so when I've had patients who come in that are vegan, I've just seen what happens, or if patients that I've been taking care of and I have all their numbers, and then they switch, and then they come back a year later or 2 years later, and we see kind of disastrous. Typically, it's a blood sugar issue that will lead to and muscle wasting. So and those go together, right? So they also go together because when you don't have enough muscle, we're not getting enough protein. Forget about the micronutrient deficiencies that happen with a vegan diet. It's just I find it to be relatively disastrous in my experience from the human, just because they're eating crap. They're not full enough. So I'm sure if we could like have a vegan diet designed in a lab and that's what you ate and it was all organic and balanced out and that we were getting protein from other sources that was clean, we probably wouldn't see the level of impact. It would probably be relatively okay and maybe even good for certain genetic makeups. But in our world of how we live right now, the reality is people grab cereal, breads. They're eating just junk, a lot of soy, a lot of processed foods in the place to get the calories and to get that full feeling. And it's more inflammatory than it is helpful.
What's your take on soy protein?
Well, most people, I think because it can be slightly estrogenic. So I try to stay away from it from the hormonal side. Plus, if you're doing a ton of it, a lot of people, now that there's a big high protein craze going on, people are doing more powders, so you can hit where it's too high for even the thyroid. There can be problems with it. Plus, most of it is genetically modified, so I tend to go try to stay away from that.
Got it. What about when it comes to, okay, so we discussed vegan diet, and yes, I agree with you on that. I see the same thing. However, I recently interviewed Brian Johnson, the person who sets out to be the next generation human, right, and how they eat. And his only protein sources are lentils, peas, and hemp. That's it.
Well, let's see how he does.
Yeah, I was fascinated to see, how when someone communicates, advocates for an idea versus like you and I, a result right away to give someone results this month, let's say, right, for them to feel better, to balance out their blood sugar and insulin. So with that, what's some of your go-to recommendations for healthy, making healthy diet and making healthier choices on the go? And same thing with the diet as you answer it, if you could cover supplements as well.
Sure. So I would like to say I cook a lot and I've been very spoiled because typically my babysitter has helped me cook. So I'm a good one to ask for something simple because I'm not going to make it if it's not totally simple. So I do a specific type of protein shake. One of the biggest hacks I can give the people that are listening is knock it out in the morning. So if you can get a good high protein, a little bit of good fats, kind of a blend in the morning. And actually, I still have mine sitting right here. I like mine to be warm. So
What's
I
inside?
I brew cacao and a little bit of organic coffee, and then I've got organic greens that are chocolate flavored. I throw in protein. Typically, it's either a bone broth. Sometimes I will do a scoop of vegan
Wow.
and a scoop of a bone broth protein. Collagen. It's all it's a heavy hitter in the morning because I can throw in some of my supplements like a Chinese herb I use called He Shao Wu that helps your hair grow. So I that would be one tip is figuring out something that tastes good to you that you can have first thing. And so many of us were doing um, time restricted feeding and we were skipping breakfast.
Yeah.
And a lot of my patients, I found this with me, and I see it with a lot of my patients that my blood sugar was actually higher when I didn't eat than when I have my shake.
Mm.
So that's where the glucose monitor comes in because it really does depend on where you are in your journey right now. So that's one thing to do meal wise is just if you can grab it before you run out the door. If you're somebody who's working, if you're working from home, just get it and have it at your desk. If you're running around doing things, just bring it with you. You can have it in the car. So I think getting that nutrition first thing in the morning has been invaluable. The rest of the day, it's really a lot of prep, and you work with your clients all the time on this. But I think if I can prepare, I try to, if I'm going to cook, I'm going to make enough to take it for a couple of days to the office, and I do a lot of just stir fry with cauliflower rice and different types of protein and peppers and vegetables.
Got it.
So that's kind of my go-to.
What's your favorite farm in Florida to get your grass-fed, organic, regenerative agriculture?
Well, what happens is I end up getting a more of a natural. I get butcher box shipped just because it's
Got
easier. So even though it's not like directly in Florida, we go to the local farmers market. So I'll go there and buy directly from the farms that are at whoever's representing at the market that
it.
week.
Got it. All right, what about some of the essential supplements?
So
And
essential supplements, yeah. Everybody is deficient in omegas and omega-3 from what I see when I test. So an omega, everyone, as we know, is deficient in vitamin D. So I tell all my patients that we need a probiotic, a good quality multivitamin, vitamin D, and fish oil. That's just very much the lowest of the low. And then depending on what's happening, I'll throw in the close second round is coenzyme Q10 or other mitochondrial support in that realm, like MitoQ, turmeric for anti-inflammatory benefits. And then we start getting into an adrenal supplement of some sort, which ashwagandha works really well for a lot of people, because we're all living in that kind of zone where it can prevent the aging of the stress, kind of be that buffer. So
all right, quick
those are,
quick question about PMS and
yes.
bloating and naturally balancing progesterone, someone asked.
So what's nice about, well, first of all, I always recommend if you're having symptoms like that, I would try to find a doctor that's willing to check your levels because you want to make sure it's one thing to have PMS. It's another thing to have like significant estrogen dominance. So when you have significant estrogen dominance, just replacing progesterone, whether it's with maca or, other adaptogens, which can help, even what I just said, ashwagandha, those herbs can help because when you're chronically stressed, you burn through your progesterone. So anything that balances your adrenal is going to help the progesterone get elevated. Even if you take progesterone that you can buy over the counter, which I think is a little crazy that you can buy it over the counter, but you want to also know what your estrogen is doing. So make sure you get tested, because if you're estrogen dominant, and this happens a lot, I'll have women in their 30s, 40s, where the estrogen is like 300, 400, and they have absolutely no progesterone. And that's why a lot of breast-related problems or estrogen-related problems are happening in that age group, because we're not aware. It's just like, yeah, I have this annoying PMS. So take action, get tested, and then there are those things I
And what's
mentioned
the
that can help.
best test? Is it the saliva, the Dutch test, or you recommend the blood test?
Honestly, if you're going still to a relatively traditional doc, but they're willing to do some blood work, it's okay to do a regular lab that's typically covered with like a PMS code under your insurance. It just has to be very specific time of your cycle.
Yeah.
So even if your doctor doesn't know, you need to know and go when you are in the luteal phase, which is the last week or two before the period.
Yeah, the day 19 or 20 through 21. Okay. And then I guess we covered that. PMS, progesterone. The last thing I'm going to ask you about fasting.
Yeah.
Fasting specifically for women and overall fasting for optimal health.
So I think, it's funny. I had a patient yesterday and she's just finishing up radiation, and she was like, what do you think about a 3-day fast when I'm done? And that's a perfect example of yes. Like if you can do it, give your body that break and let it kind of reset and heal. Typical fasting, I think, in a lot of ways has become a little bit of a fad that's not always done correctly. That's just my general opinion. I don't know about you, but
that's why I'm
everyone,
asking you kind of.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Yeah. So people are doing it and ignoring the fact that they're gaining weight while they're doing it, or ignoring the fact that they feel more edgy, like they're so disconnected, and they're so excited that they don't have to eat breakfast. So it seems like we can have more calories later in the day. There's a lot that goes on. So I'd say my short answer is it depends on the human. Like I said at the beginning, I think that the monitors help. So I always tell people that are fasting to get a CGM and to test. If you wake up in the morning and your glucose is 110, a lot of times if you don't eat, it doesn't just magically come down.
Yeah.
And I've seen it over and over again. With the patient eats something, it will come back into a more normal range. And that's because it's a cortisol response where the body thinks it's starving. So getting your cortisol tested. So we do like a 4-point salivary cortisol, doing the continuous glucose monitor, and then figuring out for your body what's best, because there's all these sexy longevity benefits of fasting.
Yeah.
But that's like hard science. Like you said, these are researchers looking in a lab at what happens with autophagy, and that all sounds great. But if your body is in stress response and that makes it worse, then those are going to be mitigated.
And any specific fasting recommendations for women in
Oh
terms of
yeah, well,
like wellness?
especially just, being aware of where you are in your cycle. And then I think fasting for women in general shouldn't be more than a day. So maybe like 1 day a week is what I see to be more effective than patients that are doing it every day with that time restricted feeding. That would be one recommendation. And then making sure to just kind of see, there's some general recs based on your cycle, but I think even that I see variation in my patients. So really testing the individuality.
Okay. All right. So, and what's your relationship, your personal relationship with fasting like?
So my personal relationship with fasting is right now non-existent. Um, because I have had so much going on that I've decided my cortisol was too high on its own to do that. I have done, 24-hour. I did one 48-hour. Probably once we get stable, we're actually moving a 17-year practice to a brand new facility in a couple of months. So right now I'm gonna not be fasting, but I think my goal is probably doing it a couple of times a month based on my stress level.
Okay.
So how about you?
Well, my recommendations, what I do and recommend my clients to start with building on overnight fast. So we all fast
Yeah.
overnight, and my top recommendations to avoid late night eating for sleep recovery, for optimal HRV, to avoid eating 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed, and this
Yes.
way you fast for 12 hours, and that's plenty. And if you
Perfect.
could build on that, like up to 13 and 14 hours, you're winning. You're ahead of the game. You're ripping the benefits of fasting. You're waking up with the slim and the flat belly and hungry and full of energy.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation.
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly it for me too.
Yeah.
So it's like just getting those day-to-day basics down, right?
Yeah.
Like and people have enough trouble doing that. They don't need to be challenging it.
Yeah. Amazing. Dr. Lisa, I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm so grateful for the
Yes.
opportunity to learn
Thank
from
you.
you, and I can't wait to meet you in person. And meanwhile, myself, I'm going to go make an appointment to Prenuva right now, because that's something that, really, struck the chord in me. I was like, yeah, I think that's what I want to
I
start.
think it's a really good idea. And what's nice about it is it's all actionable things, just like, and then the cardiac scanner for your people that are watching, and maybe if you have a heart history or if you're in your 50s, 40s to 50s, getting a baseline. And then we're creating some different protocols, from stem cell treatment to supplements to different meds like the GLP-1s. And then we're treating, and we're going to be retesting to look for progression, reversal of plaque.
Wait, you do stem cells at your office?
We are just starting. We have done them intermittently. We do IV stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
So we're picking that up with a big focus on everything from longevity to cardiac.
And what are some of the, symptoms that you recommended for?
Chronic fatigue, autoimmune problems, and then we're dialing it in for certain conditions like neurological and cardiac. So it gets again, like this, the protocol is very patient dependent, but there are some general longevity ones where, doing stem cell infusion a few times a year can have dramatic benefits too. So,
All right, I'll put it on my to-do list
yeah,
one day to
yeah.
check it out.
And that's a
Well,
case where you probably would want to fast too. So,
yeah, before the treatment?
yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, good to know. Thank you so much, Dr.
Yeah,
Lisa.
it's so nice getting to connect to you. I'll look forward to next
Likewise.
time.
Yes. See you
Okay.
next
Have
time.
a good
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.